Hello and welcome everybody to another special edition of our We Talk Tech webinar series where we aim to bring you real life under the hood, behind the curtains GIS insights from actual people, actual customers, organizations. We'll be talking about all things geographic, not necessarily ArcGIS, because the idea here is to give you, I suppose, an honest look into what it's actually like to adopt a geographic approach on projects, how to get buy-in from senior management, and also how to deliver powerful GIS into the hands of those who need it most, right? i.e. your end user. And look, the GIS community in Ireland, I'm sure our presenter will agree, is so small that we almost owe it to each other to help each other out and learn from each other where possible. I always think that GIS has two sides to it, right? There's, of course, the technical aspect, how you can configure a workflow to do X, Y, Z, run a Python script to do magical things to a data set every day and twice on a Sunday, right? Or even export a high resolution PDF map. But then there's also the business side to it as well, which I think gets overlooked quite a bit. You know, you could be the best technical person in the world and you can configure all these wonderful applications and codes and 3D scenes and real-time data hooked into it, feeding back to a SQL database that's serving out, you know, views of your data to whatever software you want. None of that actually matters if your business doesn't see value in what you bring to the table. So that's what we're here to do today, to help you when it comes to those conversations, because make no mistake about it, GIS is amazing. I know I'm biased, but people who use GIS to increase value in their organizations are even more amazing, right? And now more than ever, I believe, you know, history will prove us right in that assertion. GIS is now one of the most varied careers you can have. And I think, you know, few people walk that balanced line between the technical side and the business side of GIS, as well as our presenter today, Paul Walsh from Jacobs Engineering. Paul, how are you keeping today?
I'm not too bad, Adam. I'm just about surviving the heat. It's tough at the moment, but you know we're not allowed to give out too much either because we know it'll be raining next week.
Exactly. Hope you enjoy the Irish summer while it lasts today. So, now, now I know we're absolutely going to get into it. To be totally upfront with the attendees of this webinar, I was directly reporting into you when I worked in Jacobs. I did an internship there on a flood management project, and then went on to complete the graduate program. And I want to talk about that program in a little bit, Paul, because I think it's quite a remarkable program for GIS people. And plus, I got to work on tons of global projects, not only major Irish ones. But before we get into all of that, career highlights.
Started in with the course in Minute. I'm sure a number of people online have done that, and I know you did yourself. My initial interest was actually remote sensing because I'd done that as part of my undergrad, and of course in Minute University the GIS and remote sensing course was combined. I think during that course I realized two things, which is one, I thought the GIS was more fun. Two, there's actually jobs in GIS in Ireland, so it seemed a more natural route to go down at that point. You know, it's nice to get paid at the end of the day. But no, I did. I really enjoyed the course and did relatively well on it. And one of the great things they do in the course is the internship. You experienced that with Jacobs. I did the internship with the Ordnance Survey in the Phoenix Park, and it was a really enjoyable experience. So once I finished in that course, first class honours, whoop-de-doo, I started then with Compass Informatics, did a few jobs centrally with them, and then for the next 4 or 5 years, I did a couple of secondments, originally with Department of Agriculture, and then with the Office of Public Works. So a huge chunk of my work was on coastal erosion, coastal flooding. I moved into fluvial flooding, did work on pluvial flooding, got heavily involved in the acquisition, quality control of digital height models. So a lot of the LiDAR stuff, got involved in scoping for bathymetry surveys, did an awful lot of work on the CFRAMs from the OPW side, so the flooding directive work, and sort of developed from there. When that contract was finished, I worked with Felly Timony for a couple of years. Heavily involved in work on wind farm and other sustainable energy projects, which was quite interesting. Moved on, like as part of that work with them, then I got to do some international work. I got working on the Jeddah Master Plan, which was quite interesting. Got to work on a few different disciplines I hadn't worked on before as part of that. So noise assessments and pollution assessments around there. Bit of network analyst for journey times for removing waste from urban areas and things like that. Then when that finished, I did freelance for a little while. So I worked on a couple of smaller flood relief schemes, like as part of the CFRANs with a couple of consultants. And then at the end of that, that's when my Jacobs journey began. So about 6.5 years ago.
Wow, that's a long list of projects and
Yeah.
experiences. And talk about your role in Jacobs now. So you started off in Jacobs as a GIS analyst, senior GIS analyst, and now you're director of geospatial, which is quite a, you know, a big jump almost. Can you talk about your experience in Jacobs so far?
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. I came in, as I said, I came in at senior GIS analyst. I actually only came in as on a short-term contract. I came in as a cover for another GIS analyst who had gone on sabbatical. I actually had a couple of other offers on the table at the time, and I had offers of permanent contracts. But if I'm honest, I think the Jacobs portfolio interested me more, and maybe the position they were on the path in terms of GIS at the time looked like a bit of a challenge. Plus, at least one of the jobs I had on the table, my mother would have disowned me if I took it. So, if I'm being honest. So, Jacobs, yeah, Jacobs was seemed like a right place to start at the time, and a couple of months, 4 months into that, someone saw the light and saw that I was the GIS evangelist or something, and decided they wanted to keep me, which I was delighted to do. I'd really started to enjoy the project work at that point. It was interesting now, because when I started, I'd say in terms of the Dublin office and the Irish business, I was probably working about half time to 3/4 time on the existing Irish portfolio. And I was pulling work in from the UK at that time to keep me busy full time. So look, step one, I suppose, was bedding myself in, obviously, introducing what efficiencies I could on the existing projects. But then once that was sort of done, it was all down to going around, chatting to other people, touching base with the UK side of the business, and just getting the feelers out and seeing where GIS should be used, why aren't we using it, starting to have those conversations, and getting buy-in from people around the business, and just gradually increasing the work required from GIS across the projects. Yeah. Then obviously that naturally leads to the growth of the team. And, you know, as Adam briefly alluded to, Adam was my first graduate. Adam was the first person who joined my team. He's the first person who I've ever had reporting to me as GIS. I survived it somehow, and so did he. I think we both did very well out of that relationship, if I'm honest. Broke my heart the day Esri stole him from under me, but he's done well for himself, and I'm happy with his career path. And, you know, as someone who mentored Adam for a number of years, I genuinely do take pride that was one of the big steps in my Jacobs career, was having someone report to me, developing their skills, and then seeing where they've gone themselves. So, you know, hats off for that one.
It's good. You know, this is actually sunburn. I promise I'm not blushing, although came close a few times. You know, it's a very, you know.
If there wasn't COVID, we'd be hugging right now, Adam. You know.
Exactly. But I did mention the graduate program. That's where I kind of got my start as well. And what I find interesting about the Jacobs one is the sheer breadth of topics for technical people. You know, if you're in the GIS space in the graduate program, you get exposure to everything, and literally everything from project management, process engineering, civil engineering, mechanical, sales, the safety culture at Jacobs. Like, what is some of that advice? You mentioned, yeah, look, it was we were at the ground up, I suppose, from an Irish
Yeah.
standpoint in GIS. But what's some advice you'd give somebody just starting out, in their GIS career, and they're looking around for these graduate programs and internships? What's some advice you give them?
There's a few key things there, Adam. I suppose the first thing is think carefully about your first role. Don't go for the payoff. So if a job is paying a certain rate but there's no view to development when you're talking to them, have a think before you take it, or take it as a stopgap. And the other thing as well is interns and graduates should be well paid. You are an asset to a company, so anyone trying to sell you an internship where you're not being paid. And I'll hold my hands up, Adam. I remember you weren't well paid on your internship with Jacobs. That was fixed afterwards because I wasn't happy about it. I think, but as an intern, you are valuable to a company, and it's a two-way relationship. So you should be paid. And the same with a graduate program. Graduate program is a first step on a career ladder. It's not you being brought in to be trained by them, or something like that. My screen share just stopped here on that. Sorry.
100%. That's all
Say,
right, but it is a very real thing, I suppose, for a lot of people in GIS when they do get their foot in the door, so to speak. You were temporary in Jacobs, but then you started talking to other people, and I suppose it's the same. It's the same in every organization. You'll always have that particular division, that particular person that relies too much, I suppose, on the institutional knowledge held in the heads of a few key people, right? And that can be a very challenging process to get people to start examining methods to leverage this thing called GIS, which is new for a lot of people, but ultimately it's going to lower risk on projects if it's not held in the heads of the few people. It's on an interactive map, right? It's reduces costs and ultimately saves a lot of time. Like, can you talk about how you go about getting buy-in from other teams? You started in, not necessarily, you weren't a graduate, but how people can actually start to get buy-in from other teams, and how to keep progressing it as well.
yeah, I suppose the first thing is don't be afraid to have the conversations once you're in a role. I could have very easily gone into Jacobs and done the same job from day one until my contract finished. I could have happily pushed along in that vein, and I think there are people within the GIS world who do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's a job in front of you, get it done. I would genuinely say to anyone starting out, don't be afraid to have the conversations, be it with a GIS person more senior than you, or be it with engineers, environmental specialists, and that. If you see a way of doing something, if you see a way that GIS can bring efficiency, if you can see that, bring it to the table, have those conversations. There's one of those big words, and that are big buzz things, and it's that water cooler conversation or the elevator conversation. Don't be afraid to have them. Don't be afraid to push. Like on the flip side, the role I'm in now, the position I'm in now, I realize people coming out of college, they're coming with great ideas. They're coming with more up-to-date training than me and everything like that. I want to hear those ideas from anyone who joins my team. I think from a GIS perspective, anyone who's in my position has to be open to what new ideas can be brought across. So on that flip side, if you are that new person, if you are that person starting out, don't be afraid, because most people in my position, most people in other roles, they want to know a better way of doing things. They want to know what to do. So never be afraid of those conversations. You will occasionally hit a brick wall, but you know what? For every brick wall you hit, there'll be 100 brick walls you'll plow through. And that for me has been very important. I'm not going to take all the credit for the progression I've had within Jacobs. I've had key people support me through that, and it makes sense to acknowledge them. But I suppose that's the other thing that's very important, which is make sure you do take the time to identify mentors. Myself and Adam had a very good mentor-mentee relationship, and I think it was very valuable again in both directions. But the same for myself. Even at the level I'm at now, I still see that mentor relationship I have with more senior people is really important. I see different people who have helped me at different points in my career, and it's always important to make sure that you maintain them, you take advantage where you can formalize it, but just senior people have gone through a lot of experience, they've done a lot in their career. So it's great to be able to pick their brains. It's great to be able to see how they've gotten there, what they've done. It's also great to, I suppose, make them aware of yourself as well. And when I started with Jacobs, I was pretty much the only person working within the GIS team in Ireland. Made myself known on the UK side. To be fair to the UK side and the way the Jacobs GIS team, it was starting to develop quite well at that point. So I'm not going to take all credit for that. I have to deal with these people after the call, But certainly the leaders on that side embraced me. They gave me an opportunity. I like to think that I've paid that back over the time and worked alongside them. But you yourself have worked with Claire Bullock, and I'll be honest, she's been a big driving for my career, and working with her and her overall management of the European GIS team has really given me the platform to raise the Irish team on top of that, and it's not even that she's been telling me what to do. It's actually the opposite. She's given me the platform and the confidence to make the decisions and push ahead and trust myself. And I think that's been really good as well. And look, if that opportunity does present itself to anyone in their career, grasp it and take it. It's great. The other thing as well, if anyone who does know me and Adam in any way, we are heart in our sleeves kind of guys. We're bubbly, we're confident, we're talkative, to put almost a negative in it, where we can be in your face, we're that sort of guys. And part of the thing that I think is really important for any career, never mind GIS, is the ability to work somewhere where you feel comfortable with yourself, where you are accepted and all that sort of thing. And I think that's been a big part of my Jacobs journey as well, is knowing that I was in a place where I was doing well by being me, rather than doing well by hiding who I am, And again, I would say that for anyone starting out, if you're in a place and you feel like you have to hide who you are, if you feel like you're not being listened to, that your ideas are being ignored, maybe it's not the right place for you, and it's time to maybe look for the next step in your journey. And I'll fully point out, just because that's not the right place for you, it doesn't mean GIS is not the right career for you. The next step could be golden, and I can identify people within my team and people I know in the wider GIS community who have moved on to a new role, and so there's always an opportunity, but just be prepared to grasp them.
100%, absolutely. Shout out to Claire Bullock as well, bit of a GIS legend.
Absolutely. Look, I'm fully confident that for all the hard work I've done, I don't think I'd be a quarter of the way along the path I am without that level of support and help, No,
100%. And going from that then, Paul, so you started off in Jacobs. How do you think GIS has changed since you started in Jacobs? I presume you're coming from, even an ArcView, ArcMap how do you think GIS has changed over the years then?
This is the danger of showing my age, but it's been quite interesting because, I do literally remember working on a project where I was working using ArcView 3.1. Now, Arc 3.1 was even ancient at that point, but it was legacy work for you got a lot of guys when I started out who built tools and models in Arc 3.1 that didn't quite work in later versions. So there was still quite a lingering of things around that. And I know a lot of the hydrology modeling for Ireland was all done in that. And I think the huge change for me has obviously been, the web GIS side. It's just been major leaps, and every year it just seems to take another leap forward. But I do remember one of the first things I was working on when I came out of college with Compass was helping on the setup of the National Biodiversity Centre website at the time. And I just remember the level of programming and setup and effort going into that. And it was a nice piece of kit at the time. But I look now at what we do to set up and maintain web maps and things like that. And it's just gotten, it's not that these things didn't exist earlier in my career. It's just how the level of user friendliness has massively increased as you go along. You need developers and programmers for certain things, but it's really moved the power almost into the analyst's hands to set these things up. The expertise required have shifted, and it's really opened up what a GIS analyst does day to day. And I think even within the web platform, it's just all the knock-ons and how they've developed. So like I remember writing Python script to do the original, was it not Arc Collector, but the really older version of that, where you were literally scripting the whole thing and setting that up for tree surveys. And now you're looking at what we do with Arc Collector and soon to be, or currently Arc Field, which is launched or launching. I think it's launched.
Yeah. Field Maps is launched. You can download it from Google Play.
I hold my hand up and say I haven't quite used it yet, but I've attended the user conference talks around Field Maps because it's something I'm quite interested in. But again, it's how much easier that setup and management has gotten on that. A huge one for me is the rise of story maps. Like, from brief
Oh, mate, don't tell me we lost them again.
we've had in the past. I love story maps. I just think it's a fantastic way of reports.
There's a little bit of a delay, I think.
I think it's just a great way of combining the information of reports with. Am I all right now?
Yep.
Yeah. Grand. All good. This is the thing. No matter whether you work in a technical discipline, technology will always attack you.
That is true. At least we have you. It's a little bit delayed. It's like a 1980s kung fu movie, where they do the subtitles. There's a little bit of a delay, but we can work through it. So.
Perfect. I won't do my Bruce Lee impression then, I promise.
But I tell you one thing, it would be good. I know you have a few demos prepared as well.
Yeah.
It'd be a good time to switch over if we could. Even just to talk a little bit, Paul, about your approach to projects, right? Like you mentioned, GIS has changed so much, and web GIS, ArcGIS Online has become so powerful out of the box almost. Has that impacted your project times to deliver these?
There's definitely efficiencies have been added over time. I still remember one of our first conversations, which was, oh my God, I never knew data-driven pages existed.
Yeah.
And the joy that brought you on delivering stuff for high intensity projects. And it's just interesting how something like that, and like that's so far behind on the path now with Pro and a couple of things coming in and how it works. But it's that idea that you can, we certainly, when we're talking about web mapping and a couple of web platforms now, we're not talking cost on projects, or at least we're trying not to talk cost on projects. We're trying to talk savings. You know, if we deploy this platform, what does it bring to the project? And that, like, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always saving time, but it can just, if it can communicate the message better in public consultation or planning hearings, if it can, if 10 people working completely separately across project teams all being able to access a single source of truth without printing a moxie load of PDF maps or things like that, it's the efficiency of having the updates all going to one single point rather than having to update static maps over and over again. And I think that's been a huge part of it. One of the ones we were talking about, I'm assuming my screen is still sharing. Is it showing that?
It is indeed. I can see a 3D block and
yeah.
line.
So I'm really, and like I'll hold my hands up saying I'm going to show a couple of examples here. I'm not necessarily the person who did all the hard work on these. I just think there's some of the really cool things that people within my team are working on, or that I've had some view of and things like that. So I'm not taking anyone else's credit, because, you know, there is, and look, that's part of the beauty of being in Jacobs. We have a decent team that all have expertise and work across things. So this one here is actually, this is the one of the stations for Metrolink. So for any people on the line who are from Dublin, that should be a familiar enough one. So the idea here is this is actually the BIM 3D models from the Metrolink project. So these were all set up as iModels. It combines the tunnel sections. It combines all the various parts of the station within, and I'll show you some of that detail now just to give you an idea. But it's just that beauty of taking a very complex model. For years, the only way most people could view this would be using a bespoke software that costs money, having the expertise to open it and navigate it, whereas all of this is actually within the WebGIS. So this is served the same as a web map, so 3D map. It's probably the most intricate one we've set up so far on the Irish side anyway. So I haven't anything layered on top. I do have an aerial, but I don't think it looks great. But everything shown here is below ground. You see, if I pull that back, that's the tunnel coming out of it. But it's the sheer detail that's pulled into this and how easy it is to use. So this is actually, as you slice in, you can see the detail within the station. Then you can see the trains. If I do this just right, because when myself and Adam had a look at this last time, I managed to chop a couple of people in two, which wasn't the nicest thing to do, but it's quite good. So, you know, you have your elevators in there, you have all the stairs, every room that's going to be part of this plan is all within it. You can literally zoom to actually sit within one of the trains within it. Now, we didn't put the detail in on the trains, which I apologize for, because that would have been a nice touch. But it's even possible to drag yourself along and see within the tunnels. You can get right in, and that's just the power of just taking something and just making it so accessible. You know, it's possible to go in with that and only look at certain features within design, the design, so it breaks everything down. The one I like is you can quite simply just turn the walls off the design and see the inner layers of the station then, and as you say, just everything else is manageable. And just that power is brilliant. That's something Jacobs have worked alongside Esri on for the last couple of years. We presented at the London User Conference a couple of years back around 3D GIS. I think that was 2019 at this stage. 2020? 2019. Sorry, I'm losing track of my years at this stage. I'm sure I'm not the only one.
It's called COVID brain, I believe.
Absolutely.
We all have it.
But yeah, it's definitely the steps on that, and just the sheer power of being able to present that in such an accessible format, and it's just powerful, you know.
Yep, 100%. Not to mention as well, Paul, everything is fully interactive in these BIM models now. You know, if you click on a wall, it'll tell you exactly what it is, and yeah, bringing that BIM lifecycle together even for maintenance.
Like
know,
that's
if
all
you
the
have a,
detail
yeah.
there, yeah. And one of the things we've done on ones is we've linked that to a much more detailed database that can sit in the background as well. So you can have even more detail linked beyond what's within the BIM layers. So an asset management system or something similar, which is quite a good pull off of it. Do you want me to jump on to any other examples, Adam, or are you?
Oh, go for it. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I did mention the story maps. This sort of thing. So again, this is one of the ones I have quite like. So this is publicly available, and I know Adam was saying he might share the link afterwards. So this
Yep.
is just that sort of switch in public consultation and the use of story maps for that. So this is a project very close to my heart because one of the potential options goes very close to my house. But it's for air grid, it's the Kildare Mead grid upgrade. So this runs right down from Mead to that. I won't go completely step by step through it, but it's just a very well set up story map, full of detail, full of information the whole way down. This was built again, I think Fia, who you know yourself, Adam, Fia Nidunka from my team, led on the development of this. So I did a bit of the scoping at the start, but she did the hard work, and she's really developed as our story map expert on our side. And it's just that run through as you get to the story through, and then when you do get further along. So I know this is probably a long time for the GIS guys where they haven't actually seen a proper interaction. That's all your project detail, and that's split out by the different disciplines, the various designs, and the various options then. And it's just something I'd encourage anyone who's interested in seeing a really well set up story map to have a look into that afterwards and just see what is capable for just telling that story of a project from the start out phase through the options. And then the idea is we'll bring this through as the EIA develops then as well. But yeah, it's just, as I said, an awful lot of detail, quite a number of interactive maps, and we got work quite well alongside AirGrid to make sure that their required media and styles are all in there as well. So it's an interesting one.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk a little bit about that, Paul. Like, is there a shift in your GIS team from, typically, I mean, I've worked on EIAs in the past, environmental impact assessment reports, and typically these things are gigantic documents,
Yeah.
like, and even, there's talk, globally as well of putting these things into digital EIA. So for, any member of the public to come in and, at a glance, they understand it straight away, where they understand the options. Is
Yeah.
that something you are looking at, like digital EIAs as well?
Oh no,
It's just,
absolutely. It's a big thing in Jacobs at the moment. So in the background, and it's one I can't share, but there is digital EIA being set up and being set up for the Metrolink project for Dublin, and that's a work in progress, and quite interesting. From the UK side, and I can take small credit for this because again, Fia, who did the Kildare side of things, is working quite heavily as part of the Jacobs Digital EIA team, and she's been working. So this is one again, can be shared after as well because this has gone public as well. So this is one. This is the M60 in the UK, and this is a digital EIA in story map format, and so we've been working quite closely. This has gone to the planning board for a review of this as an app. Not the project hasn't gone for review, but this app has, and the planning board in the UK are really impressed with it, and that's really good because it opens up the dialogue on what can be allowed moving forward. So at the moment, I suppose one of the restrictions, I suppose, on it all is the statutory side of things. So in Ireland, it's firmly in place that you still have to log these printed copies with onboard Planoli. You've got to produce the big reports and things like that. Now, personally, I don't think that should be a stop to producing this because of how good a job it does communicating it. And you know, in recent times, we've used Esri story maps to present at oral hearing. So the Greater Dublin Drainage Scheme, we were involved in that, and we used story maps as part of that oral hearing. Really powerful. The board were very complimentary of how we did it. The public, even those who disagreed with the project, were really intrigued and got really involved in all the interactive technology involved around that. So we, you know, it wasn't just the story maps. We had giant, wonderful touch screens, and I think that just opened the door to the idea that you can bring digital into that platform. And I'm hopeful that the more we do in this digital EIA space, the more we can have those conversations with the planning boards, maybe on Board Planala this side and the UK side, and just see what we can do in the future. But like, again, it's brilliant. It's very accessible and easy to pull up any of the various disciplines if you're interested. The interactive mapping and the text is there, all the detail, all the information behind it. And this actually isn't in story maps. I actually lie, and it's probably worth noting. So this is in the Experience app instead, which, if anyone hasn't used yet, it's worth learning. It's quite interesting. I'm a novice. There's people within Jacobs much better than me at it, but it is quite well set up in how you manage to pull data and information and how you pull everything together. It's just that extra step up when you need it. But again, there's just a lot in that. And again, if anyone is interested, I'd say it'd be quite an interesting one just to peruse through to see what level you can bring that public facing story map and GIS experience to the public.
Yeah, 100%. That's phenomenal.
I'm trying to see what else I have here. Oh, this is one that I know I was briefly talking to you as well, and it's just on the survey side. I'll apologise in the sense that we use collector for this rather than fields, but you know, that's what we had at the time.
Sure, look, we're not gonna split hairs.
But yeah, I thought anyway this was just quite an interesting use. So this is part of the Bus Connects project. I would assume most people, at least in Ireland and at least Dublin, are aware of this. And as part of this, we had the opportunity to drive the designs to reflect issues in infrastructure at the moment. So this was going out, and we sent fields, we sent teams out into the field along, God, I think it's about 200 kilometers worth of roads around it. So Jacobs did a quarter of that, and other consultancies were involved in the other side. And we, as the digital team, brought it all together from them all. But I just think that this just highlights maybe the power of field collection and what it can drive. So if you click on any of the points here, I would pick one without a picture, because I think it's the pictures that really can drive these. 99% of these have pictures, but the first 5 I picked don't. But it's just the idea. They are there. See, I told you guys. So it's just this idea that they went out into the field, recorded issues which may impact on people's movement if they have, if they're in wheelchairs, or even put the likes of pushing buggies or elderly and things like that, and literally recorded thousands and thousands of points from this to drive the design. And the NTA were quite supportive of this being part of the design. We're a big driver on it. But I just do like that idea that if people are going out into the field anyway, record the details using something like this, record the images. The images are so powerful. They tell as much of the story. The fact that they're geo-referenced means, you know, you can pinpoint where you've taken it. And it's just great to set this up. And all these fed in to the designs, and where all the footpaths and road edges and crossings all needed to be upgraded, and it all fed into that. And then of course you have a great library of imagery then to bring into the any reporting and things like that as well. And it's one of those things that I think I've started to try and push a lot of people on, which is if you're going out surveying anyway, bring collector app set up on your phone.
Oh, don't tell me we lost him 10 minutes before the end. It's going to break my heart. Can you hear me now, Paul? Ah, oh, no, he's gone. Unless any of the attendees, can you just shoot it in the chat to see if you can hear me, if I'm just, or if you can hear Paul. Ah. Well, that is unfortunate, unless I'm just in the middle flown around. You know, if you can't hear me, that's fine, because I'm just in the top left corner on my screen, just moving my mouth. Paul, unfortunately, we can't hear you. I think maybe your headset battery might have died. Can you hear me? Okay. Or... Yeah, cool. What is coming up? Oh, Paul, no. What is coming up, and I think you know, it's worth sticking around for. I apologize, we've had technical issue after technical issue today, unfortunately. But if you are sticking around, we do have 9 minutes. If you have any questions for Paul, you can put them in the chat, or you can ask a question on GoToWebinar. It should be on the right-hand side of your screen, or that way. And then the second thing I would say, what's worth sticking around for is, you know, Paul and his team have developed, you know, a good way to onboard people to, you know, these products of kind of critical national infrastructure, and it's all done in a web GIS environment, you know, and they're using stuff like Survey 123, you know, to get sign-offs. They're using story maps, you know, to get people up to speed. So if, you know, you're coming in to a project, you know, say for instance it's the Bus Connects one he showed, you know, you get all the information in one place, and I think it's quite powerful, you know, for any GIS user what he's about to show, if he can rejoin. If not, I will get him to send on a few screenshots if he can.
Hey,
can you hear me?
now?
Perfect. I can indeed. Yeah, perfect. Always
better?
stick with the wired headsets. Wired headsets, you know. I can hear you. Can you hear me? I think we can all hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we kind of did, yeah.
Headphones.
Yeah, boom. There you go. Always stick with the wired ones. Paul, I was just telling people about you sharing your email there. Sorry, 2 seconds. Just in case we don't want to, well, blur that out in the edits.
Where I'm cursing you in a call doesn't help.
Oh, it's quite all right.
Yeah.
But I was telling people just about if we could run through, if you did have time, you know, the story maps, that central onboarding process for people as well. Oh, you have something else as well. Perfect. But I was just telling people, you know, it's definitely worth, like, this is one of the, you know, I suppose, examples of a single source of truth. We always talk about this in GIS terms, you know, it's a single source of truth. It does this, whatever. But this is a live example, you know, where you can find out all the information about a particular project. In this case, it's Bus Connects. But can you talk us through this, Paul?
Yeah, so this has been great. Again, I'd say thanks to NTA, because they gave us an opportunity to develop something this intricate from a digital perspective. And like you said there, the idea is just that single access point for everything relating to the project. And so, you know, everybody working on the project is shown in organograms within the team side. I won't go into some of them because that all the environmental impact reports are saved into there. We actually haven't saved them directly. We've embedded the project wise link so people can get to them from there. We've an awful lot of the reports that people need to read as part of the guidance. One of the interesting things we have on there is a sign off, so everyone signs off to say that they've acknowledged all of these. Every public consultation brochure that's gone out as part of the project is all saved within this as well, all within the platform. The one that Adam might be alluding to is this digital induction, which is saved here and here. But I think this was a really good use of story maps. Anyone working on a big project knows, based on the life cycle, how long they go on and things like that, that you do have teams come on and off projects as you run, as they happen. So it's this idea that we've developed a platform which just essentially gives people a bit of the background on the project, tells them the breakdown of who's working on it and what they're doing, and then starts to explain how this digital portal works, what are all the applications that are embedded within the portal and what they do. Give people that sort of one-stop shop so they know everything they're doing. And then once they've run through that, they then there's a survey 1, 2, 3 form embedded at the end so that people can acknowledge that they have done this. Once they've done that, then they get the logins and their access to the rest of the platform. And it's just a nice way of doing it. And then again, there's a second one there to show that they've signed off on the charter as well for the project. And it's just a nice way of introducing people to these projects, a nice way of managing your onboarding, a nice way of setting up the process for giving people logins or single sign-on access. So this is all actually set up as an Azure single sign-on, but it's that way of knowing that when you set them up, they'll know what they're doing. And it's, you know, it's not the longest thing, but it just makes maybe that first day or two on a project that little bit easier. And like even within that, you know, there's all our web mapping platforms are all set off to one side. And again, it's just the power of what you can share. So for those who aren't familiar with Bus Connects, from our side, it's 16 separate routes and they're all being managed as 12 separate EIA projects. So it's quite a number of teams, it's quite a number of people working across it. So obviously having somewhere where everyone is referring to, where everyone draws back to, is absolutely key. And just getting along on that. And just maybe as a last example from Bus Connects, this is something we set up for meetings with Onboard Planola recently to communicate the routes, and it was just the idea of being able to get the interoperability between CAD and GIS and being able to present it in a really usable format. So hopefully this does work now. But what we've done is we've combined 5-centimeter drone surveys, which Murphy Surveys flew for the project, or Murphy's Geospatial as they are these days. We've brought in the CAD designs developed by all the different design teams across the project. That'll all sit correct in a minute. So it was just this idea of having a really functional and simple way for the Onboard Planola and the design teams to run through the design from end to end, because previously it would have been done with static PDFs. Set up a nice simple slider just to allow them to see the current versus the plan, and then you can start to see where trees might be maintained, where they might be lost. You start to see how the designs have changed on the road in terms of adding different lanes and the bike lanes, how the paths and what way it's feeding in. So they're quite an interesting and a lot of work using FME to bring the designs in and things like that, but something you can set up automatic workflows for, and then just start to set up, and it just gives a really powerful tool then for communicating in public consultation, and as I said, in this case for the oral hearing side.
That is incredible. See, there you go. I knew, you know, we had technical difficulties. Apologies for that to our attendees, but you more than made up for it. I think that those examples are just incredible, and always using, you know, the new map viewer. You know, that's one thing I've noticed. Experience builder, story maps, bringing it all together into one, you know, easy to understand. Like, this is the one thing, you know, the one thing that you said to me, Paul, even when I was in Jacobs, you know, and the one thing that stuck with me is you always need to keep your end user in mind, no matter what you're doing. You know, your end user drives all these things, and at the end of the day, it's about, you know, putting this, like, this very powerful system, you know, probably the most powerful GIS system in the world, right, into the hands of people who need it, whether it's on board Planola, members of the public, your clients, NTA, TII, whoever it is you're working on these projects with, or maybe internal stakeholders as well. Give the project manager in Jacobs an overall view. Here's the project, and like everything happens somewhere, right? Everybody needs GIS, at some level, right? Everything happens somewhere. But thanks so much for that, Paul. I really appreciate it. I'm sure
I think
our
that is the
attendees
key
do as well.
there. I think you nailed it on the head, and that's probably the last piece of advice I'd give to anyone. When you're talking through these, always try and push to see what the end user wants. And the end user isn't always necessarily the person stood in front of you. So always look for the opportunity to maybe have the conversation with a potential end user to see what the actual required outcome is, rather than that, as we said, Chinese whisper effect of it traveling through teams, and I think that's key. The end user is the most important thing when you're setting these up. And you're not setting it up for other GIS nerds in most cases. You're setting it up for someone who's low tech or wants to see it quickly and things. So look, that's the key.
Oh, 100%. And look, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And I'll
Apologies
send
for the
through the links as well. Oh, sure. Look, it wouldn't be an Irish webinar if something didn't go dramatically wrong. So it's all good. But we will send out an email afterwards as well to everybody with the links to the story maps and whatever else you can share as well. But thanks so much for your time, Paul. Thanks so much for your time. Attendees, we'll be back with the next one in around September. But in the meantime, if there's anything, look, if there's anything you want to see a webinar on, you customers, whatever, just let me know. We're always looking for, new ways to do webinars. If there's something that you've seen at the user conference last week and you want to get to know it a little bit more, tell me all about virtual reality for Irish data. We're more than happy to do that as well. So until next time, guys, really appreciate your time. And thanks again, Paul. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam.
Cheers.